Well, good afternoon, everybody. I was told by Chris that it's important that I get on the stage this time so that the camera can see me. So, Chris, are you able to cut the music from where you are sitting? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Greg Carroll. I'm the board president here of Kansas City Jazz Alive. I want to welcome you to what's going to be, hey, I'm talking here. I'm sorry. Yeah, like my junior high kids. I want to welcome you to what's going to be a really fantastic series of events. This particular event sets the stage for what we're calling jazz as a societal voice. Chris and I felt it was very important to have the discussion that deals with how our artists talk to each other in terms of handing down the baton, passing down the lineage. And so there's 3 different sessions that we've scheduled over the next many months. And we're so glad that you all are a part of it. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. You see this lovely exhibit behind you. This is 4 pieces to a 17-piece, eventually 21-piece. We're expanding it by 4-piece exhibit called Kansas City Jazz Legacy. On your stands or your tables or chairs is a flyer. One of them has the little Jazz Heritage Series logo at the bottom. Tells you about how that you can have this exhibit come to your workspace. So rather than these 20 panels sitting in the basement of my house, I would love very much for them to be in the lobby of your office or in your school or in your church or in somewhere, because it tells a narrative about Kansas City. So if you want more information about that, we have some booklets up here. Feel free to take one, take another handout, and then also want to share with you some information about a great event we have coming up. You know, every year we do Spotlight Charlie Parker. We're about ready to enter into the 10th year of Spotlight Charlie Parker. We're so excited. Yeah, let's give it up for 10 years of birth. Although you all know we've had 103 years of birth, right? Anyhow, so this year's event is going to be fantastic. We've got a lot of great events scheduled. And this year's artist in residence is the fabulous Tia Fuller. We're going to do a very special project with her and a Kansas City All-Star band. And we're also going to be putting together a group of string students so that she can have a chance to sort of re-envision. It won't be a reenactment of Bird and Strings recording, the Charlie Parker Bird with Strings recording. It'll be kind of a re-envisioning or a reimagining. So that's going to be fantastic. That's in August. Look for information. One of your flyers here has a link to our website, Spotlight Charlie Parker, so you can learn a little bit more about it. So, speaking of learn, you got some learning to do. Let me please welcome to the stage your fabulous moderator, Mr. Steve Kraske. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you. Where you want.
Well, hi everybody. This is your what your favorite talk show host looks like after half a radio show today was supposed to feature Logan Richardson, and there was a big power outage in California today, and Logan didn't get up at 7 a.m. when he needed to be on the radio, and we were scrambling for a whole hour trying to navigate live radio without Logan. But we'll have Logan on next week to do a conversation about his new album. I'm a huge fan of Logan Richardson, so that'll be a lot of fun. But today, to Greg's point, we're going to have a conversation today about how one generation sort of upholds and brings along the next generation in our jazz community, and how that whole process works. And it really is the lifeblood of Kansas City jazz and sort of the lifeblood of the music throughout the country, one generation passing it down to the next. So that's what we're going to have a conversation about. And we've got a great panel here. The Reverend Bobby Watson is on his way to the stage. Let's give him a big round of applause. Deborah Brown is up here. Deborah Brown. Marcus Lewis. Steve Hargrave, who's a board member of KC Jazz Alive, and we are board representative here today.
It's a table built for that group.
Yeah, we do.
Such a gigantic group, very powerful group.
We could talk, or we could have Deborah sing. I'm not sure. I want to see it over.
So
let me. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
they'll all have to use the mic because we are streaming. This is going online.
No worry. Yeah, bring those microphones a little closer here. Okay. Well, let me start with this, ladies and gentlemen. In writing about this session, Greg Carroll and Chris Burnett were saying that Kansas City players have managed to find a way to work across generations in ways that it just doesn't happen in other cities. Greg has said that jazz veterans in Kansas City purposely grow their replacements to ensure the perpetuation of the art form and its traditions. Marcus, to what extent are Greg and Chris right about that?
Well, first of all, thanks for.
I want to just grab that thing and bring it up. Are you on?
There you go.
It's on.
It's on. It should be on.
All right, well, first of all, thanks for
I
having
don't
me.
think you're on.
Yeah, I don't think I'm on either.
Okay.
So the bottom,
There you go.
He's on. Why don't you grab this? Why don't you grab the mic out of that thing? There you go, Marcus.
All right, well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. And yeah, so I think Kansas City, you know, a lot of people think I'm from here, but I'm really a transplant. I'm originally from Georgia, and I moved here in 2014. And that was one of the first things I recognized about the city is just the rich tradition and history in jazz and the mentorship and things that Bobby was doing at the university and all of that, and just the rich tradition. I think Kansas City is a really great and special place for that. A lot of other places I've been, it seems to be just that everyone's for themselves. And so I feel like even though it's really great, I feel like there's some ways that we can also all improve on that to make it even better.
When you first got here, Marcus, how did that manifest itself? How do you remember people reaching out or you reaching out to other people and finding ways to connect?
Yeah, it was pretty organic, you know what I mean? Like going out to places like the Blue Room. And at the time when Take 5 was in Overland Park, yeah, you know, and different spots. And I think Broadway Jazz was happening. And just going out and meeting people in the community, everybody was really welcoming. Usually in most scenes that I've been in, it hasn't always been that case, or it's not as welcoming. It was actually a little bit strange to me. I was like, well, these people, they're a little bit too nice. You know, so yeah, it was just everybody was really welcoming and willing to work and willing to give everybody their space to do what they needed to do. So for me, that was a really awesome experience.
They didn't just want to borrow money from you, they were actually reaching out.
Well, I didn't have it, so.
Yeah. Deborah, what's been your experience along those lines?
you're talking about the properties?
Just people passing it on and people reaching out and sort of sharing the wisdom they've gained over years and helping younger players come on the scene.
When generally speaking, no, people do not reach out for that. Young ones reach out to those that have been in the business for a while. That's what happens, and not all of them do that. Just some that are particularly interested. For example, you know, I wrote this kind of thing out to kind of keep my mind focused here. When I was a kid, I remember Eddie Baker had a new breed band. My mom worked along with him at Charlie Parker Foundation that developed out of that at school. And Carol Jenkins was another person. So I was very young. I was 15 years old when I was singing with the big band. I waited the whole night. And then I was invited to sing a number with the Eddie Baker band. And then everybody started like generally kind of went in. It was the only number I knew that was jazz. So it started from that moment, and I became more and more interested. So when I was a little bit older, he used to bring in Terry. I mean, there was so many people he brought in. I remember Max Roach. I remember a drum solo that he did. And I never heard anything like that before because Max was such a unique drummer. But I learned something from Clark, so much from Clark and working with him. And my mentor was Johnny Griffin. Johnny Griffin, we'd be talking on the phone and he's like, I love this song. He's like, yeah, sing the changes. So I have to sing the changes, So that's how that works. You reach out and you're just there. You're just there because you were reaching out. So it's not like older ones reach out. I mean, maybe the men do, but it doesn't happen like that with women. Normally, women have to go after this, and then with singers, they do reach out to you, but in the form of a class or school workshop. That's what I think.
So for women, it's harder?
Different.
Different. Yeah.
For women, it's different. When you're a singer, it's different because, you're in your room, you're learning all these songs and you like it, you like what you're singing. People say, oh, I like it. And then you get on stage without any kind of training. That's normal, but then after you've been in the business for a while, you're like, I need to reach out and figure out how to take care of my voice or, how do you sing this song? But normally, like every saxophone player on the planet, they emulate somebody at first, and that's what singers do. But then they have to reach out themselves and figure out what's the next step.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Well, I was really hoping to have had the Logan Richardson conversation in my hip pocket for this discussion today, because Logan Richardson, Bobby, as you well know, is such a great example of someone who benefited from this idea of passing it down with, Aladdin and Claude and other people, and you, for that matter. Your whole career came of age, at least in part, because of Art Blakey. His whole thing was passing it down from one generation to the next. How have you benefited from all of this during the course of your career?
Well, I'll speak to the Kansas City side of it.
Yeah.
People like Luke Hamza,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, Aladdin, Sonny Kenner, Eddie Saunders. There were a lot of folks that, I met coming through Kansas City. I met Pat Metheny. We're the same age, but I met him down at Turner House in Kansas City, Kansas. And they used to get these big NEA grants. And that's where I got a chance to meet and get to know Clark Terry, Jimmy Heath, Max, David Baker, Cannonball Adderley. They would bring these folks in and they would spend a few days with us. And in fact, Clark was the first jazz musician I saw live while I was still in Minneapolis, because I went to junior high and high school in Minneapolis. Because my dad was with the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. And the entry position he got was in Minneapolis. So he moved the family up there. And they had their school system was different. It was more centralized, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities. So they brought Clark Terry in. Then I ended up meeting in Kansas City, and we spent some days together. He got to know me and my wife Pam, and the same with Jimmy Heath. And so it was a very great experience in Kansas City, Kansas, being able to be in their presence. And they would always lay Rich Madsen, that's another one. They would always lay these little things on us, whether it's musical or philosophical with life, and those things stick with you. I remember let's say, Jimmy Heath, because he's very, very nice, very approachable. And Mr. Heath, we were in the master class, and he says, we go, show us some of that hip stuff. Show us some of that hip stuff. You know? And he goes, you know, can you do this? I can't, it's out of my range now, but so he said, can you do that? All right. So that's where all the hip stuff comes from.
Yes, indeed.
You know, for the musician in the house, diatonic sevens. And just knowing your basics, knowing how to manipulate changes to make it easy for yourself. But I had a lot of mentorship here in Kansas City. Not to mention when I got to New York, that's a whole other chapter. But Kansas City, and I spent a couple of nights. Used to hang out with Pat Metheny at his house on New Summit because his older brother Mike Metheny, who was in the Army at the time, turned Pat on to the music. And so, you know, Pat is another one, Monty Musa. You know, he doesn't get enough credit. You know, he took me under his wing, and I used to spend a lot of time out at his house. And he would show me songs, and he said something like, you know, if you want to be a monster, you got to know maybe 1,000 songs and sound good on all of it. So it's like little things like that. It's like, well, I lost count of how many songs I know, but hopefully when I get presented with a piece of music or asked to play a certain song, I sound good, you know. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily a monster, but you know, because he loved Herbie Hancock. He's a monster. Grant Green. So I mean, I learned a lot here. Conrad Rucker, another one that probably will never know. He had a huge record collection. There was a lot of places here. George Adams, pianist. There's a lot of names that will never make the history books that touched me and helped me grow and expanded my knowledge of this music, you know.
Is the level of mentorship today the same as it was when you were coming up? Do you have a sense of that?
No, it's not the same. I mean, well, nothing's the same, but I would say the way the thing is now, the younger generation is encouraged to hang out with people their own age. You know, they give us all the lip service, respect, maestro, master, whatever, Master Watson, Uncle Bobby, whatever, you know. But the phone doesn't ring, you know, they don't call me up. And if I go out, you know, I really don't volunteer too much information. You know, people have to want to come to me, you know, because you can lead a horse to water, but he's not going to drink unless he's thirsty. You know, you dig that? He ain't gonna drink unless he's thirsty. So I'm looking for thirsty people because I love to share, and the people that I came up under, they love to share. And you come there with Bambi eyes, and you know, and they may repeat themselves. You might say, "Oh, yeah, you know, you told me that last week." You know, you just let them repeat themselves. You know, but that means it must be true. You know, confirmation. That's what's called a confirmation. You know, if somebody tells you something twice, 3 times, 4 times, you know, you go, oh God, this guy's old. You know, the only way they're not to get old is to die. So you know, that's one of the things that I think this generation, the industry has encouraged them to hang with their buds, and they think that they're creating something new, but they're maybe creating something for their time, but it's not new. I see a lot of people wearing afros. That's not new. You know, it's new to them. Bell bottoms. I see some people processing their hair again. That's not new. You know, they think they're inventing something and they're just like discovering something. You know, so it's like, unfortunately, the industry doesn't allow my generation and other generations to present a platform and or opportunity for them to be invited and to sustain the relationship. Because everybody's out there trying to find what's new. Because, you know, I'm not gonna lie, you know, I played smooth jazz when I was in high school. You know, because I had a band, there was a singer. So I was a lead singer, you know, we played, well, I didn't sing, I sang on the horn. So, you know, we played everything, you know, Gladys Knight, James Brown, some teachers, I had 3 horns backing me up, you know, and I look back and said, we were playing smooth jazz back in the 70s.
Yeah.
You know, and then electric bass was there and the keyboards were there. And, you know, I mean, what's new?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, everybody reflects on the time that they live in. You know, so I would, but I think it's not for everyone. And there are some special ones that are in my life, you know. They call me from time to time, or they reach out, and that's good enough, you know. Then you're called, if you were chosen. See, right? So it's not. I'm not worried about most of the young people trying to, you know, they do your thing, you know. But if there's some that are thirstier than others.
Well, I want to ask Steve about the role of this organization and maybe helping with this, but Bobby has raised a question that I'm going to pose to Marcus because he's the youngest one on the panel. Marcus, what the hell is wrong with young people these days? In 10 seconds, what's going on?
I'm not considered young. He's the youngest one?
You're the youngest one. You gotta represent right now.
Oh, you really want me to answer that?
Yes,
I mean, I don't really consider myself young, you know, I'm kind of in the middle, you know, so I think I have a unique vantage point in that because I understand, you know, everything that, well, not understand everything, let me rephrase that, but I understand the perspective of older and younger people, and I just think to piggyback off of what Bobby was saying, there's a huge sense of, in younger people, individualism. And what a lot of them, what I see the issue with that is that, you know, when you're 20-something years old, you don't really know who you are yet. Amen. And so the only way that you can figure out who you are is to imitate others and learn from others first. And then in a very organic way, you'll find yourself. But I think to piggyback off of Bobby, it's just like, I think people initially just want to get there. And they think I'm an individual, I'm me and I'm doing something new, but there's really nothing new. There's only, you know, self-discovery.
I'll tell you though, I am of an age now where I talk to my contemporaries who are still at the newspaper. I look at the KCUR newsroom. We have a young political reporter there. And it has crossed my mind a few times. I thought, you know, I covered politics around here for 30 years. Maybe they might want to know something about what's going on out there. I never hear a thing. And to your point, you got to be a little curious. You got to be a little eager to come get it. I'm not sure I'm seeing it, but I understand your point, you know, too. But you do wonder sometimes. Yeah. Well, you know, Steve, the obvious question I was going to ask later on here, but it's pertinent now. What can KC Jazz Alive do to facilitate a culture and a history and a progression that has been so important to the music here in this town? And arguably, we do it better than other places, despite what we're here.
Great question. But before I answer it, I have to give a disclaimer, and that is, my fellow panelists know 1,000 or 10,000 times more about this subject than I do. So I just want to acknowledge I'm not a musician. This is totally from the perspective of a innocent bystander.
So that's all true. We just want you to fix it. So it's just, you can fix it and then shut up and we'll talk to you.
This is my tee up for that answer. Okay. So we've tried a couple of things. Actually, we've held a series of what we call listening sessions, where we will invite in a group of venue owners or educators or musicians, and just let them talk about what their concerns are, what their problems are, what their frustrations are. And sometimes it has something to do with this subject. But one thing that it did raise at the time, and it's relevant to the subject that we had as our theme for the last few of these get-togethers, and that is the idea of abundance versus scarcity. And the attitudes that some have, for example, venue owners that believe that if you get one of my customers, that means I lose a customer.
Yeah.
And if you're more successful, I'm less successful. Others don't believe that way. And I think that's probably true of within the musician group, within educators, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we had listening sessions. We learned about the concerns and problems. Then we started with what we call musicians assisting musicians. And the idea there was to find musicians that we knew were very successful, for example, at marketing their product, and have them present how they do that to people who are interested in learning how to improve their marketing. Well, that met with pretty mixed success. We did not have nearly as many folks come to those sessions as compared to what we thought and that we invited. I've sometimes wondered if we would have been better off now that we've been through the pandemic and learned all about Zoom. Maybe it would have worked better if they could be anonymous. Maybe they didn't want anybody to know that they were coming to learn about marketing. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. But those are two ways that we've tried to learn more about these issues and tried to help in at least some small way with people who are interested in learning more about whether it's marketing, legal services, how to get better health care, planning with tax accountant, those sorts of things. And it's been pretty mixed.
Deborah, if this organization were to undertake this, by formalizing that structure, do you sort of ruin it? Because I think Marcus used the word organic. It's traditionally been kind of an organic thing, informal, older musicians talking to younger musicians. But if we were to make it a program, would people come? Does that sort of ruin it?
Let me put it this way. I think what's kind of missing here is when you're talking about young people and about mentors, the thing that's missing is the actual interaction. So whenever you have that actual interaction on the stage, let me explain it like this. I've worked since I was in Kansas City. You know, I always wanted to work with the legends, and I got that dream realized through the years. I worked with all kinds of legends, and it feels real different than working with the guys that I hired as my band when I was young.
It feels different how?
I'll tell you that I sang not too long ago, Publicity, and I did that with Lee Konitz. And I taught that to my students. But when I sang Publicity with Lee Konitz, it was the time, and you don't learn that in school, you know. But I know it now. I mean, but I didn't learn that in school. So it has to be hands-on, and the best way for musicians to learn is actually to be on stage and hang with them. That is absolutely the best, because it's a feeling that you get. And for any program to work, it's going to have to be in the form of workshops by either hiring musicians and having someone to, you know, because we have that in town. Every time somebody does something at the Kauffman or, you know, or at her Jewel, they always have the artists to work with young people, and it really is worth it. I like to go to those sessions, because it really is worth to hear their stories. And so it's that feeling that you get. And when you, 1, 2, 3, 4, I mean, there's nothing that substitutes that. And it's different, you know. And the sad thing is that, you know, all my mentors are gone. You know, the people that I worked with through the years, they're gone. Epic in Horace Parlin, which were pretty much my mainstays. Horace Parlin was the kick behind the Mingus songs. Epic in, you know, Oscar Peterson and Ella Fitzgerald, you know, when you hear their stories, when you play with them, it's, you miss it because they're gone and you know nobody else, even though there's a lot of real talent. They're gone, you know, it's sort of like, you know, going into extinction because each person is so individual.
Yeah.
Well, Bobby, you did a lot of this, bringing the big names into town when you were at the conservatory. I just noticed Carl had Ron Carter speaking to everybody via Zoom. And Ron didn't mince many words. He was pretty direct with them about how to get it together. How important is that? You obviously thought it was pretty important.
Well, yes, I mean, the Zoom thing is like, it's so funny because I've been in touch with Ron for years when he wanted to come out, you know, but prior to the pandemic, Zoom wasn't an option.
Right.
And so we had to bring cats out, you know, Curtis Fuller, Benny Golson, so John Faddis, Mulgrew, John Hicks. I mean, the list is long, you know. And Gerald Wilson, you know, we have to hook up their transportation, get them lodging, and host it, you know, and make sure that they, you know, treated world like the royalty that they are. And when you talk to certain people, you know, you kind of know their requirements. You know, you can't put them in basic economy. You know, it's not like, you know, you're gonna put somebody like that stature, you know, you at least want to get them in business class. So you got all these costs. And the good thing that came out of the pandemic is I had a saxophone studio almost every week, every other week, and I had Branford and Eric Alexander and Charles McPherson and Vincent Herring and Donald Harrison and James Carter and Nicholas Payton and Billy Pierce and all these kind of cats were by Zoom. We meet from Joe Lovano, we meet from like 6 to 7, and they were at their home, and they have a glass of wine in their basement, whatever, and we're comfortable, and they would go as long as they want. So I think that the great thing that is available to Carl now is to have these cats come in. I mean, they came in Washington, and other cat do the Zoom thing, so it's really cool. I didn't want to lose my thought about I guess I did.
Well, you gather yourself. I'll tell you a little story. When you mentioned having Benny Golson out, and I got him on the radio when he was out here, and I worked really hard on that interview, really hard. We had him for about 40-45 minutes, and we talked about, you know, Coltrane and, you know, all his big hit songs back in the day. It went really well. And what I remember about that exchange was when he got up and walked out of the studio, he paused for a second and he looked back at me. He said, "You've got a really good thing going here." Yep. And he walked out the door.
Yep.
And man, I felt like I finally started. I was fairly early in the radio, and I just felt like $1 million. I thought that there's your, not directly jazz to jazz, but boy, I'll never forget that moment as long as I live.
Well, you do great interviews, Steve, I have to say. You know, whenever I can make it on your show, I'll be there. But
What are you doing Monday?
I can't make it. No, but you know, one of the things that was a phenomenon in New York was Barry Harris had their jazz cultural center. And so that kind of hands-on thing, I think that you were talking about, Deborah. Barry Harris had a regular thing where it was his club, stage, drum set, and singer comes, he had a choir, and people would come down there, and Barry would be, near the piano or at the piano. And so he would basically just have people play. And then he would stop them and coach it. When I was with the Messengers, I had Coach Jim Green, who you'll never hear about. He was Art Blakey's road manager and valet. But he saw Bird and Press, you know, one of the cats, and I was there. You know, it wasn't hearsay. So when I was first in the band, I would play, and he'd be listening to every note. So I was like a fighter between rounds. And after the set, he would pull me back and he'd go, yeah, you know, Bobby, I was with you, you know, but you got to that third chorus, you lost me, baby, you lost me. You know, yeah, and I can remember it fresh on my mind.
Yeah.
I knew what I just played, and I knew what he was talking about. You know what I mean? And I respected him, but he was my coach. He was my corner man. And Barry presented some type of thing like that, where you played, you might stop the band, we'd hear something, and he would correct it on the spot. And then everybody would play again, and then sometimes he would have to go to the piano and show people, and everybody gather around the piano. You know, it was very intimate and very loving. And I think that's what maybe Jazz Alive could do, is try to somehow get some type of situation where it builds so that young people know that they can come to the workshop on Wednesdays or, you know, whatever day it is.
Yeah.
And that they could count on me being there, Greg being there, you know, Marcus, I was thinking M, I had to go down my list. M, or, sorry, Marcus.
That's all right.
And then Deborah or Chris, and there's many more. But, you know, I think there has to be someone that has to guide it. Barry was the figurehead, and then he had like Lonnie Hilliard come by. But they wouldn't even have to ask. They just know I'm one of Barry's. You know, Tommy Turntine, C Sharp, Clarence C Sharp. I mean, all kind of cats, man. Just we're in the New York City. We come by Mickey Bass and Hicks and all kind of cats that just dropped by Barry's because it was a regular occurrence. Sometimes the place would be almost empty. Sometimes the place would be full. You know, maybe he had like a little pot that you'd make a love offering.
Yeah.
And I think, or maybe he charged $5, whatever, to keep the lights on. You know, whatever.
Abby, did you do something a little bit like that at Johnny's on Truce?
Oh, it was Mike's Tavern.
Mike was Mike's, yeah, then, yeah.
Yeah, Mike's Tavern every Thursday. It's called that Thursday night at Mike's.
That's not happening anymore though, is it?
No, they changed hands and everything, but
Yeah.
all my students, because during the day, you have these students and you have to schedule you have to put together small groups and big bands according to their schedule. So a lot of guys that hang out together don't get to play together during the day because of their schedule. So you do the best you can to match the level with all the students and make it even. You know about that, Chris. You know, Marcus, you know, but it's like, you know, you got like, okay, well, he'd be great for the 1 o'clock. Class 1. Okay, we have to move you over here. And then you do the best you can. So when you put up the listing of the combos at the beginning of the year, everybody's fairly happy. You know, but then there was like, and you knew that they were hanging out at night. So make an extension of that is that everybody gets together at Mike's on Thursday and everybody can play with everybody. Yeah. And that was the time, you know, where I was in charge and you know, sometimes I would grab them once they come off the stage. You know, like, man, you know, like this, Steve Martin, who plays fantastic. When I first heard him, he came from the session we got to school, and he had a sound. He always had a sound. And they played something like Green Dolphin Street. And he was up there and he played it and, you know, butchered it, you know. And, but that's okay, man. It takes a lot of work to suck, you know, on an instrument, you know. Get up there and when you're trying to improvise and you might suck, but all right, at least you got up there and subbed, you know? You're on your way. I think he got up there and pulled him off and said, man, don't ever do that to yourself again. Don't do that to yourself, man. If you don't know the tune, man, just write it down and learn it and come back next week. You don't have to be on the stage for every song. Those little things like, I pull them off, every rare occasion, like just stop the band. What the heck are you guys doing up here? But it was like, I laid back, I was at the bar, just kind of chilling, eating the nachos or whatever. And there was someone hit my ear, I was like, come here. That's what they did to me, So that kind of environment, I think, would be very healthy for Kansas City, because you would need somebody to direct it, I'm not applying for the job, but I wouldn't mind doing it actually, on a regular basis and establish some time.
Yes, Marcus jumped in here.
Yeah, because I want to answer this question, because this is actually something that I think a lot about. Is, and I've been guilty of this too, where we talk about things from like an educational standpoint, because I think differently from anyone up here, that I came into jazz a different way. So I grew up in a real small country town in Georgia, Waynesboro, Georgia, like one traffic light. We got a Walmart 10 years ago, and that was a huge deal.
You ever been to Bonner Springs?
Yeah. But so I didn't even know about jazz until I got to college, and then once I heard it, it was like, it resonated with me, this is what I want to do. And so I came about it from going to school and then moving to New York and then meeting people that way. But I think one of the things we're talking about, you asked me about young people, right? And as I look up in this audience, there's 0 young people here to speak for themselves. And so, that's me like interjecting my viewpoint on this. So I think with organizations, what they can do to help, because everybody always sees what like Deborah does or what Bobby does, or myself or anybody, or Ebony, what we all do, social media or live performance, but we're all doing stuff that nobody actually sees. And so I think with organizations, where the work is going to happen is to do the work that people don't actually see. And so I feel like that we need to cultivate audience for this music, because you got to remember when jazz was, coming about, it was more of a cultural thing where we would see somebody do something and then we say, oh, I can do that, because you may have saw a singer and you go, oh, I can do that. We always talk about, okay, there's not women in jazz or there's not this or that, but people have to see people doing things in order to see that they can do it, right? So accessibility, when we bring people into the town to do music, it's at the Kauffman, it's at the gym, and the tickets are $50, $80 or whatever. And a lot of people that need to get this music, they don't have access to it. So for me, to like, when you play gigs, we're always talking about musicians, but it's like our audiences are not musicians typically. They're people who love the music. So we need to be presenting and showing that music to people that maybe don't have the opportunity or the ability to see it, so that we can cultivate audiences and see that that's a part of their culture. Yeah. So for me, that's super important to not only cultivate musicians from the educational standpoint and be able to play and perform, there's also a tradition of the audience and the music and being able to see that. I think that's important, not to just focus on one area, but to cultivate an audience and to give people access to this music that may not get it. I think that's a tremendous kind of gap that we're missing.
And what does it look like in practicality to you?
So I'll give you one idea I had. So with my big band, right, I had an idea and I approached some people, because all these things take money, right? I would do it for free, but I got to pay 18 cats. I got to pay this kind of cat. Right? You don't want to get in that thing where we always asking people to do stuff. If people love me, they're going to do it, but but you don't want.
They don't love you that much.
Yeah. So it's like to go. We got all these parks on the east side of the city, right? Why don't we I give a kid $20? Hey, go put these flyers on people's doors. There's going to be a concert. We'll post up right in front. Do a free concert. Kids running around playing. They're just experiencing the music in the background. We're not forcing the music on anybody. It's just a way for them to experience the music. And, like a kid like me, when I heard the music, I was like, this is me, you know what I mean? So I think those people are out there.
I love that.
You know what I mean? Or just, like given a certain amount of tickets and access to, even if it is at the Kauffman, we're gonna set aside this many tickets for a local school. You know what I mean? I mean, just things like that to like get more access to the people so that we can build audiences and musicians and culture. Because that they all go hand in hand.
Right. I want to ask you a question. Though. What is the music? What is the music? I mean, you got a rapper and a turntable, and you do other stuff, and you're a big band. But I didn't do when I was growing up. So your big band is more in today, and you're hitting young people. Now, my audience is getting older and they're dying off. Although there's some young people coming up, they love it, they're more sophisticated, they can bring their dates to a jazz club, don't have to worry about nobody, at least right now. Wood, coming in with an A4K 47 or whatever, whatever they call them things. And they can take their women out for a date and feel like an adult. A lot of the music you do, you want people to get up and move, which is the way the music always has been. So let me talk about the music. What is the music now? I can't even see myself doing a movie score or writing a soundtrack for a TV series because the music that I hear don't sound like the music I grew up with. See, it's changed, man. So I mean, like you got this tip of the spear there. That's your music, but what is the music? Do I have to change, or do I have to?
It's art. It's an art form. There's no competition. You can't compete with an art form. It's just an art form, and that's what jazz is. It's different. It's always going to be different. It always has been different. Yeah. Maybe in the 20s and the 30s, maybe in the 40s, it was like pop music. Right. But it's not that anymore. No. And then, so for me as a singer, it's difficult because everybody just wants to hear the song that Whitney Houston did or this or that, which is nothing wrong with it. When I was a kid, I played, all the pop music. I did that until it was so disappointing that, I went to a jazz club at night, and then some of the people that were at the pop concert said, wow, you're really good at jazz. Why don't you do the jazz? And I'm like, maybe I should. And then I moved to Europe, and then I was able to cultivate that more and more because it was always in me. But it's different today than when we were growing up. It's jazz was something that was actually on the radio in the daytime. Right. And now it's not. People don't even know what it is. So a lot of people come to my jazz concerts and like, I've never been to a jazz concert before. Right. It's not an uncommon statement. And there's nothing we can do about that. We just have to be true to, I have devoted my life to be true to good melody and good swing, and that's all it is. I'm not mixing anything because it's me and because I come out of the generation. For my friends, I'll do a Luther Ingram song or whatever, I do it for them because I know it's what they can handle. But I don't want to go out on the stage and do that. And, it's experimental as I get is, coming close to maybe something like for the sake of, just close to what Betty Carter has done. I like progressive music, beautiful melodies. That's kind of my thing, but, my concerts in Europe are sold out, but here it's not that kind of interest.
I mean, the sound is changing, and there's nothing you can do about it, And I think that's part of, old people.
But
Young people don't go to Central too often.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't saying like what I do
unless you're
specifically.
Kenny G.
I'm sorry. I wasn't saying what I do specifically, my music. I was just saying like, yeah.
You have a thing, man, where, and it's fun when I play with your band, I really appreciate what you're doing, and you found a way to, to bring it in with real instruments. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. Ain't no sample, maybe a little bit in there, because electronics are here, you can't get rid of it, you can use
And
it.
it's just a time difference.
time
It's a time difference. We're twins, okay?
Yeah.
Really, we're the same age, you know? I mean, but we came up at a completely different time than you probably half of our age, you know? I mean, but, and there's nothing we can do about that, you know? It's sort of like asking somebody to remember something that, you know, all you can do is go on the internet and see what it's like. That's all you can do, you know?
So Marcus, when Bobby asked, what is the music? How do you answer that?
I think my opinion is just the music it comes from the source of blues and gospel music. So no matter whether you're,
Whatever that is.
yeah, like no matter, you know, all that traditional, like Black American music, right? So it's like, I would just like for the younger kids to see the whole scope of it.
Right.
You know, just get out to, because there could be somebody that grows up a mile away from the jazz museum and never see any concerts.
That's right. That's right.
That's my point. It's just like, I just want them to be able to see it and experience and let them decide for themselves.
Right.
You know, that's like the main thing is like Black American music is what.
They have to, if they can hear it, then they will feel it, the experience. Layla Hathaway is like the Ella of the day. And what's that other one lady, from Philly, that was a Roy, she had that show, she's an actress as well. Not Erica Badu, but Jill Scott.
Yeah.
Those were like the Ellas and the Sarah Bonds of today to these young people. You know, because they got quality in their voices, you know, with a little kind of a glimmer, what could come through
Well, with
is,
vocals, that's different.
yeah.
Because now you got Samara Joy
You got-
at one,
now you got some-
you got,
I was
you
ready
know,
to say,
you know,
you got
Sarah
Samara Joy, you got,
you
what's the
know,
name
so
of the
it's,
baby?
so it's happening, and it's
Yeah.
happening with young people,
Right.
but it's just so,
How do you get into their field of vision or ears? How do we get into their head?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, there was a time when there were festivals, when there were outdoor concerts, when there were things that featured the music of Kansas City and that, you know, and there's nothing that anyone can go. I love this idea of popping up a concert in the park. I love the idea of bringing it back out into the community, because the people don't know what's going on. All you're asking is for people to come into a club, to come into a restaurant where the owner doesn't want to have certain type of music, or where, you know, there's a cover charge, or they only serve drinks, so people want to eat, you know what I mean? There's nothing. There used to be Spirit Fest and Jazz Fest and all of these things where you want people to come and see a whole lineup of jazz music in the city. Have a festival. We don't have a festival.
well, you
We
know,
don't have enough
not to
concerts.
bring up a bad memory, but that was tried in 2017 and everybody came, you know, Houston person and Chick Corea and Logan and everybody else. And that thing blew up sky high because of budget
Well, I
concerns
mean,
and
that
everybody's afraid of it
budgeting
now.
and all of that is, you know what I mean, that's unfortunate.
Right.
but
It's
that's-
really
It
important.
doesn't mean that you can't try again.
So
We're
she's
talking
also,
6 years later now.
she's also referring to Parks and Rec used to every Sunday night during the summer, bring in big groups. If you're
No
in
one's
the park,
coming in,
sometimes
no
it was on the
one's-
plaza, sometimes
Right,
it's
on
another
the
place, you know,
river.
I heard Stan Getz.
We can sit on boards
Right.
and,
Right.
you know.
Good point.
So,
That's what Marcus,
So-
you hit the nail on the head on that one.
Greg,
Well, so this is great stuff. A little bit away from the topic.
Yeah.
It is great stuff, though. There are festivals in Kansas City or in the area that people can go to. Yes, there are festivals that used to happen. I kind of happened to run one for 8 years. That was, by the way, ran in the black, did not lose money. And there is, yes, a need for some of those kinds of things to come back. Let's make that another discussion.
All right.
Because I think it is something we should talk about. I love the idea that we have these veterans on the stage that can talk about how the baton was handed to them and how they're handing the baton that serves as the continuation of jazz as a societal voice in Kansas City. So I'm gonna ask first, to just switch back to that, but bear in mind, keep your ideas, because we wanna continue, we can only do two of these, one of these every 2 months, right?
Right.
And we wanna continue to do that. Because I'm saying what I'm saying doesn't mean I'm saying, screw you, I don't wanna listen to you. I'm just saying this is of incredible panel up here that's imparting some great information about the lineage transfer. And let's not get into, okay, we're gonna go down that weed road and really bitch and gripe about what the city ought to be doing and what these venues ought to do. Quite good, okay? Thank you.
Can I try to bring us back with a question then?
Yeah,
I grew up in the seventies and in the early eighties. You mentioned Eddie Saunders earlier. I used to go down to the Musicians Union on Tuesday nights when Oliver Todd and Eddie Saunders had their big band, and I got to sit next to Piggy Minor in the trumpet section, which was this phenomenal experience. And here I am, this young white kid, you know, sitting in with these guys and sometimes worrying about the neighborhood because 18th and Vine wasn't what it is today. But I had very limited access to a music library, even though I wanted to. I could listen to jazz in the night, hear things. I bought a few records, but I had limited resources. To me, I see the kids now, they've got access to stuff online, YouTube and Spotify. If you want to learn a song, go out there and you've got 20 different versions of that song performed that you can listen to and try to learn. How can you tap into that resource with them because I think they're doing that some, and maybe that's why they're not giving you the respect and coming out and spending time with you because they have so many other options.
I think that's where we kind of,
grab that microphone.
I think that's where we kind of bifurcated when we got to the question, what can an organization like KC Jazz Live do to ensure that this tradition continues? I think that's what things. When we got to that point.
I thought I was answering the question.
No, you like, I like. No, you said with cards.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
It's
maybe
Marcus's
that's
fault.
some type
It's all Marcus's fault. It was going great, then Marcus produced it.
Some type of a budget or, just to see, put up a mobile bandstand, maybe we should purchase a jazz mobile type vehicle. You know, that can roll up and roll down. We can have one of those.
The Kansas City Symphony does that.
Yeah, we get those vehicles. I mean, we had one that's higher than a cannonball. We pulled up into that park over there, Quindaro Park, and they lowered the thing down and we lifted the cannonball up on the stage and he played with all those young kids and then, I mean.
It's a neat idea.
I think maybe we should try to invest in some type of vehicle or something like that,
Yeah.
that could be mobilized and late. Let the band get up there and play it and split,
Or maybe Jazz Alive could help leverage that within the jazz community.
Get some sponsors.
Rather than maybe necessarily being the ones that own the vehicle that does it, leverage it with those that do.
Or partner with the symphony.
Partner with something.
Yeah, partner. I think saxophone. I just remember that.
Steve, I'm wondering what's going through your mind as you're listening to this and what you're thinking in terms of opportunities and what's striking you?
Hey, you want to take hands, man?
Lots of things.
Well, I'm getting ideas.
Got a microphone, yeah.
So I've got a lot more ideas sitting up here than I've spoken about, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I think facilitating something like this is right up our alley.
Yeah.
Trying to put people together and make things happen without us having to raise all the money.
Right. Should be all on your.
Bobby, talk just for half a minute, why everyone would like to hear this about Art Blakey and sort of how he did what he did and what his thinking was behind what he did, bringing younger players to play with him and turning those players over every few years. What was he reaching for? What did you learn from that experience?
Well, he taught by example. The bandstand was a sacred place. No matter how tired or hungry or angry, whatever, frustrated, when you step up on the stage, you do all that other stuff away. Then he taught me how to read the audience. You want to start loud and go soft, start soft and go loud. How to pace the set, These professional things and he, repeated himself a lot. So that's kind of when you knew it was time to move on. Because when new cats would come in, you would see that act, and he would drop on them, and you've seen it before. And so when I got to the point where I was like, calm in the truth, it's okay. just gonna do that. And he looked at me and I looked at him and like, oh, it's time to go, you know? Cause I'm ruining his drama. Cause he had a method. So, you know, he used to say, this isn't the post office, you know, he wanted to keep as many young people coming through as he could. So that basically was his whole philosophy.
You know, and Deborah, you mentioned something to me at lunch. I thought it'd be worth these folks hearing about. Just talk for half a minute about Emmett's Place and what that's about. And I'm not sure if that fits or not, but it might.
Well, during the pandemic, Emmett Cohen had a my experience. He just like me, you know, at the Johnson County Community College. My concert, they gratefully helped me to do that on March the 13th. On March the 14th, all the other concerts were canceled. And as well for Emmett Cohen, because was supposed to be in Kansas at the Lead Center at that time. Promoter called him up and said, listen, you know, we know that concert was canceled, but we can still pay you the money. Maybe you can do something for us on Zoom. And so from their apartment, you know,
Right.
yeah, and that's how it started. And what is so wonderful about that is I know a lot of young musicians because I was working at the conservatory for many years over in Holland, but also I would be a guest artist in a town called Groningen, which is north of Holland. And a lot of the students have graduated from there, and our program was New York comes to Groningen. Only I was from Kansas City, but a lot of those young musicians I knew there in New York because that was part of the program. They had to go over there and make it. So Emmett, you know, started inviting all of these different musicians that he had been working with in New York, and they were all young, and I got a chance to see them play, make the connections. And to me, it reminded me of when I first went to Europe, and we had so much fun just swinging all night long, you know? And it just gave me that feeling again. And I thought, oh, man, it's wonderful to see this online with these young people experiencing that. And then someone like Houston Person shows up, or, you know, I mean, you know, some of the seasoned players, he would invite them. And I think it's just a wonderful program to, when that young and that old meet together, you
That's
know,
my
it's
point.
wonderful.
Yeah. It's a neat idea.
Is that yours, Tepe, with you at Groningen? Yours, Tepe?
Yes, yours is-
With you there, yeah,
You know,
next
yours was a student at the school where I used to teach.
place.
And he and Bram Winans
Bram,
and Jürgen Velka, they were students there. And Bram was my accompanist,
Yeah.
because I taught at that conservatory for 7, 8 years. And Bram graduated, and we had invited Richard Ross to come over. He lived with us for almost a year. And so we got that band together to accompany Richard Ross when he was there. And then they loved the idea of Kansas City and moved here.
Yeah.
You know, anyway.
I brought that, I asked you that
Yeah.
because when I was with the IHAE and we traveled all around the world and partnered with various festivals, North Sea was one of them. Yours, Tepe, was my main go-to guy in terms of getting students engaged in some of our master classes, like when I bring in Michael Brecker or Elvin Jones or whoever. And I mean, if yours called it, they showed up. So it's that kind of respect that garnered this kind of following.
You know, he's like Marcus.
Exactly.
He's Marcus, he's the bridge between the younger and the older
And
ones.
it was sort of that thinking that started Chris and I having this conversation
I
about
see.
societal voice,
Yeah.
about the connection to mentorship and the importance of passing it down and passing on and then passing it back up. Because like Bobby has said, he's learning from Marcus. I'm learning from Marcus and all the other young cats what they're doing. So it's just, there's this beautiful sort of reciprocity, right? Or this beautiful handoff and then hand over, if you will, and then hand back up, that keeps this music so beautiful and honest.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just hearing these amazing stories. I don't want these to get lost. Are you familiar with storyboard?
Oh, very much so.
Okay, and you probably know about One Small Step out of Wichita.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's some way to put that together in a new program that's focused on this music.
That's really interesting. Are you all familiar with StoryCorps? It's, you know, basically it's a NPR kind of thing where, you know, folks come and one person, a dad interviews a daughter, daughter interviews a dad, you know, that kind of thing. And you can begin the history of this music in this town. It's a really interesting
Well,
idea.
you got a rich pool of fish to
Start right here.
I mean, yeah, start fishing here. I mean, what could we do? This would be my follow-up question to you. It would be an offline conversation. What can we do to talk with you about how we can leverage that so that this conversation goes StoryCorps?
Yeah, so in Wichita, there is a Latino community in Claudia, and I can pronounce her last name. But she started this because she saw the divisions in the country. So she put a little package of a way, she calls it small stuff. And so people will kind of submit, they would like to have a conversation, and then she will make it happen. But the cool thing about this is that it's a public radio station. It's now online. So anybody can access it. Plus the fact that there is an archive of all of these that are accessible, you know, ongoing. So I don't know, it's something that was a really good.
Yeah,
I'd love to,
yeah.
you know, maybe we have a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Bobby Watson, Deborah Brown, open mic or online, people can interact and ask questions. Yeah, it's a really interesting.
John will videotape it. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Repeat something I mentioned there. The great French scientist Louis Pasteur said, "Fortune favors the prepared mind." That's something I heard in college. The most important influential thing I've heard in my life. The job of organizations like this, the job of organizations, is to help prepare the minds of younger individuals and a lesson learned.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Absolutely. Anybody else? Let's give our panel a big round of applause for
Session's coming up. So session 2, which will be July 14th, is called Keepers of the Flame. Lonnie McFadden, David Basley, Jackie Myers, and Emily Berman, our board member. Session 3, Innovators and Educators, September 8th, all of them here at Westport. Eddie Moore, Jim Mayer, Amber Underwood, and our brother Chris Burnett. I want to thank Tom and Pam here at Westport Coffee House. Building here the next time, so help us get the word out, you guys, and give us all those feedback, all those comments, those ideas that you have. Give us that feedback. Continue to know that we're going to stay on focus. Yes. Oh, QR code. Yes. You all should have a little document in front of you with a QR code. We're asking you to go check out that QR code, which takes them to the survey, because we want you to survey this session. And this is where you have an opportunity to tell us some of those things that you thought we should do, like in the panel. So QR code us and let us know what you think, and we'll continue to drive these panels. Let's thank our panelists again and Steve Kraske. Thank you all very much.